当前始终力挺以色列的美国面临巨大舆论压力，这也让美国对以色列的支持有所松动。据美国有线电视新闻网5号报道，一名联合国外交官证实，美国修改了安理会有关加沙问题的决议草案中的措辞，并在当天分发给安理会各国代表。决议草案副本显示，美国一改以往态度，支持在加沙地带立即停火，但同时提出2个条件：停火时间为10月6周，且在各方一致通过后，哈马斯释放所有被扣押的人质。
美国的态度实际上没有转变，美国是在玩一个文字游戏，因为美国跟国际社会的分歧主要是2点。第一点是国际社会要求立即停火，无条件停火。那么第2点，国际社会是要求持久全面的停火，也就是说彻底结束战争。那么这2点美国都不同意。那么这一次美国说了要求立即停火，表面上看起来它跟国际社会的第1个条件是一致的，但实际上它对立即停火设置了前提条件，就是哈马斯必须释放被扣押人员。同时呢，它反对全面持久的停火。所以他的措辞变了，他的基本立场没有任何的变化。
好，稍后马上来连线特派员刘和平。刘先生你好，也门胡塞武装日前在亚丁湾用导弹袭击了一艘散货船，并导致了3人死亡。那您认为这件事会不会导致美国与胡塞武装的冲突升级呢？
其实自从红海危机爆发以来，美英联军已经对胡塞武装至少发起过5次以上的空袭行动。然而我们看到的结果却是，胡塞武装袭击红海商船的行动不仅没有收敛，反而是变本加厉。至今为止，已经发动了45次以上的袭击行动。3月1号，已经有一艘满载数万吨化肥的英国货轮遭遇袭击沉没，并导致了严重的生态灾难。现在又将矛头对准了美国公司所拥有的货轮，而且首次导致了3名船员的死亡。按照这样一种局势发展下去，红海的航运秩序将会彻底失控。那么接下来问题就来了，作为世界头号霸主的美国，为什么收拾不了中东地区一个力量并不算特别强大的地方武装？对此我认为，在这件事情上，美国实际上并不是非不能也，而是不愿意作为，或者说是没有动力去作为。这背后的原因有3个，一个是随着美国总统大选的临近，拜登不想因为打击胡塞武装而干扰了自己的选情；二是拜登是深谙小不忍则乱大谋之道的。对于拜登政府来说，支持乌克兰打败俄罗斯，以及按部就班地推进印太战略，才是他心目中真正的大棋。3是因为美国已经不再依赖中东的石油进口，也不再依赖红海航道，相反，更为依赖红海航道的是印度、中东、阿拉伯等国家。在这种情况下，也门胡塞武装时不时地骚扰一下红海商船，还有助于这些国家加深对美国的依赖，让他们认识到美军驻扎在中东的价值。说的不好听一些，拜登政府是在拥厚自重。正是基于这些原因，我认为在这起导致3人死亡的袭击事件发生之后，美国仍然只是会象征性的空袭一下胡塞武装，而不会下决心消灭胡塞武装，更不会出动地面部队。同样，看穿了拜登政府心思的胡塞武装也会将袭击红海商船行动进行到底，红海乱象还将持续很长一段时间。
那对于美方修改了安理会有关加沙问题的决议草案中的措辞，支持在加沙地带立即停火，您又怎么看呢？
因为自从新一轮巴以冲突爆发以来，在联合国安理会的历次投票表决当中，美国都是无条件站在以色列一边的，心甘情愿地充当了以色列的挡箭牌。然而这一次，拜登政府终于准备绕过以色列单干了，在以色列并不同意的情况下，就提出了支持在加沙地带立即停火。而且拜登政府的这个动作，还有借联合国安理会来压以色列的意味。与此同时，美国副总统哈里斯还破天荒地对以色列袭击无辜巴勒斯坦人的行为发出了迄今为止最为严厉的谴责。而在我看来，拜登政府这样做不仅仅是因为最近发生的加沙惨案让其承受了巨大的国际道义压力， 更为关键的是，随着特朗普击败竞争对手黑利，成为共和党内的唯一候选人，拜登与特朗普的总统大位之争即将进入到白热化的状态。这场选举不仅事关拜登与民主党的政治前途，还事关俄乌战事的走向以及美国主导的国际秩序的存废问题。面对这样一个大是大非的局面，拜登显然是不想将自己、民主党、美国以及美国所主导的世界秩序跟以色列捆绑在一起，共同成人。
进入全国两会时间，国际社会高度关注中国蓝图、中国方案。直播港澳台推出特别策划“外眼看两会”，对话全球政界、商界和学界意见领袖，解码中国式现代化，聚焦心智生产力，探讨百年未有之大变局的应对。本期对话中国改革友谊奖章获得者、美国库恩基金会主席罗伯特·库恩。
The work report of the Chinese government is always the most important document that we can read to determine the way China's leadership is thinking about the future. So several things struck me. The economy is always important in these documents, but in this year, the economy is especially important. All the other issues are mentioned, of course, but we see a high stress on the economy. Now, the approach to the economy is very much long-term.
作为美国知名中国问题专家，库恩认为，观察和研究中国发展路径的一个重要方式，就是通读中国两会期间发布的政府工作报告。在他看来，中国今年设定5%左右的经济增速目标非常务实，考虑到了去年较高的基数、外部环境等因素，并统筹兼顾了经济长期发展目标。
Problems with domestic demand that many people say that the solution would be a big stimulus, but leadership does not do that. In fact, Premier Li Qiang said specifically that we have avoided doing a big stimulus or having any major short-term boost. And to me, that's a very encouraging sign. Now, they are doing specific targeted stimulus, for example, subsidizing the trade-in of old home appliances or cars in order to get new ones, and then targeted specific kinds of subsidies for new segments of the economy that is an important recognition they're looking long term.
库恩注意到，心智生产力这一概念被提出仅半年就被写入中国政府工作报告，而今年的报告对科技创新的琢磨比往年也更多。
You know, I've followed China for 35 years. I think I see that every year. But this time it has much more dominance and much more urgency. And one word to me was exemplary of the importance of science and technology, and that word was disruptive. New technologies must be disruptive is a very strong concept because China, of course, in politics and in economics and in society, always likes stability. Now China is saying, we want disruption in technology because that's what it requires to really be state-of-the-art.
To develop new quality productive forces, the most essential task is to make breakthrough on disruptive and frontier technologies. So do you have any suggestions on how to achieve it?
Contributed right now around, I think it was 13% of the overall GDP of China is in this new area. Very high number. It used to be like 6 or 7%. It is already significant. But the most important things that can be done is to change the mindset of people who work in those areas of science, technology, and innovation. There's recognition that the science and technology management system must also change because seniority is not the most important thing, but the most important thing is brilliance and innovative ideas and new ways of doing things. And that's recognized in this report. The emphasis on science, technology, and innovation with new thinking behind it.
库恩同时提醒，中国发展心智生产力的过程中，一定会受到来自国际上的压力。比如，在新能源车和高端芯片制造领域，美国已经开始出手打压。他还认为，美国今年进入大选年， 拜登政府可能为了选票而展示对华强硬。
If Trump wins, it will be more volatile and uncertain. Might very easily have a radical increase in tariffs. Biden wouldn't do that. Biden has actually been tougher on China in a real sense because Trump alienated American allies. So they're less likely to join with America in a coordinated approach to China. Relationships between the two countries continues to be, certainly the most important bilateral relationship in the world. And it behooves whoever is in charge in the U.S., to figure out how to work with China in the best way. It is a challenge. It'll take, good diplomacy and wise leadership in order to prevent that from accidentally becoming anything worse than it currently is.
As we are conducting the interview, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is holding press conference in Beijing. If you were one of the journalists, what kind of questions would you raise?
One of the areas that I noticed in the work report was a strong interest on China to join the new Trans-Pacific partnership. There are lots of issues that have to be met. I was impressed in the work report that China aggressively said that that's one of its objectives to join. And I take that seriously. So I would want to ask Wang Yi, as this is being negotiated, what are the steps that China should take in order to facilitate?
香港特区行政长官会同行政会议决定，将维护国家安全条例草案于3月8号刊宪，并提交香港特区立法会审议，以全面落实香港基本法第23条、全国人民代表大会关于建立健全香港特别行政区维护国家安全的法律制度和执行机制的决定及香港国安法所规定的限制责任，确保可早日有效维护国家安全。 香港特区政府已于今年1月30号至2月28号就香港基本法第23条立法进行了公众咨询，期间收到98.6%的支持及提出正面意见，显示立法具强大民意基础。 香港特区政府的新闻公报指出，现今地缘政治更复杂多变，国家安全风险无日无之，手法层出不穷，威胁可突如其来。特区政府必须堵塞国家安全的缺口，尽早完成立法工作。早日完成立法，国家安全受威胁的风险便少一日，让香港能够全力聚焦发展经济、改善民生，维持香港长期繁荣稳定。